but my mom would not let go of us. And she was like, I will scream, I will kick, but you're not going to take my daughters away. And they didn't. They actually left us. So at 5 years old, I was sitting in a jail cell because we got caught by immigration. They had an extra lock and my sister couldn't open it. And we were stuck and the kitchen was on fire. It was just a really bad marriage. It was a horrible time in my life where I constantly used, and my using I used even more.
This is part 2 of the Johanna podcast. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, please go back 1 episode and listen to that. And then continue into part 2, which is a continuation of her story. Okay. And then the gaming venue comes into play, and you're surrounding yourself with a bad crowd once again.
Yes.
So what happens from there?
So actually after I got divorced, I tried to go back to school. Remember, I dropped out when I was 16, so I was trying to finish school. I was trying to finish high school at the time. So I actually enrolled myself in a charter high school, which over here, I think they're called continuation schools, like for the bad kids. So I tried to enroll myself in one of those, and I actually did. I was actually going and I was going to my classes, and I was part of like the spirit squad. I was captain of the spirit squad, and I was captain of the prom committee, and I was on the honor wall for like several months. So I was actually doing pretty good, but I was still getting high. And my parents were so proud of me. I was getting awards. I was captain of this, captain of that. I was dating a really good guy at the time, and it was just a good year. 19 to 20 was a very good year. I was still getting high, but it was just a very good year. And then that's when I started doing I dropped out of high school again, and then I started working at the cafes and hanging around with really bad people, doing a lot of bad stuff and getting high. And I remember I came home one night and my dad was waiting for me in the living room. And it was at 3 a.m. because I used to get out of work at 2, because I used to work the night shift. And he was waiting for me in the living room, and he turned on the light, and obviously my eyes are like, you can tell that I'm high. You can totally tell from a mile away. You can tell that I'm high. Mm-hmm. And my dad was like, are you using drugs? And I said, no. I straight up told him no. And he said, I'm going to ask you one more time, and I want you to be honest with me. And I said no again. And he grabbed me by my arm and he dragged me out of the house. And he told me not to come back.
And that was the first time he ever found out that you were using drugs?
Mm-hmm. And that was the first time he ever, physically, my mom or my dad have never laid their hands on me. And that was the first time he was ever, I guess you would say, violent towards me, because he grabbed me by my arm and he literally dragged me out of the house. And thank God he didn't take my car keys away. He just dragged me out, pushed me out of the house, and shut the door in my face. And he told me that he never wanted to see me again. So I was like, I remember I stood in front of his door, the door of the house, for, I want to say it was like 10, 15 minutes. And I was standing there and I was like, he can't kick me out. He won't kick me out. I'm like his little girl. He's not going to kick me out. There's no way. He's going to open the door right now. And he never did. My dad never opened the door. And I was in shock. But the only thought that I had in my head was, finally, I can get high without them freaking out. So I ran to the car. I was dating one of the worst guys that you can possibly, it would be like your worst nightmare as a dad. That's what I was dating at the time.
Did he have a neck tattoo?
Yes, he did.
Of course he did.
Yeah. He had several tattoos on his neck. He was tatted all like he was just covered in tattoos, covered in tattoos.
Sorry, not that tattoos are bad and not that neck tattoos are bad. I was trying to make a joke in case anybody gets upset about that comment. Okay, continue.
No, like, tattoos are definitely not bad, but he had been in prison for God knows, I can't even remember how many years he had been in prison. Not that prison is bad, like I don't want to say that. But he had been in prison for some really, really bad stuff. And he was covered in tattoos. So pretty much a dad's worst nightmare, that's what I was dating at the time. So I called him up, did my little show of crying. I was a really good, obviously, manipulator. So I started to cry. I said that my dad had kicked me out. Like I really needed like a shoulder to cry on. And this is gonna sound really bad. And I said, like, I don't wanna, I was a really bad person, but this guy was married and he had just had a child with his wife. And I came into his life and he left his wife and his kids because I was in his life. Yes, I'm telling you, it did a lot of bad things. And this is where like addiction takes you, where you don't have a heart. I was a very mean person. I was a very heartless person. I did not care what you thought, how you felt. I did not care if you were hurt or you. I just wanted to get high, and he was my means of getting high. He used to sell drugs, and if you're dating your drug dealer, you get free drugs. So that's what I did. I dated my drug dealer, and I got free drugs. So I didn't care that he was married. I didn't care that he had children. I just wanted to get high. And I didn't have to go home anymore, so I didn't have the pressure of acting perfect for anybody. I didn't want to act perfect. I didn't want to act anymore. I just wanted to be a full-blown drug addict. And that's what I became.
What was it like with your dad? So it's a very, very stark moment, seems like, that moment where 0 to 21, presumably, you, at least superficially, have a really loving, caring relationship with your dad. I mean, you guys, you loved each other. You were doing all this sneaky stuff, but like under the hood, like there was like true compassion and love and whatever. And then that moment happens. It's like, I guess I want to go to like what, I don't know. That's just like it's very poignant. I don't know what exactly I want to ask you about that, but I guess maybe a question would be like, where's your mom in that situation?
My mom was the one that told my dad that I was not acting normal anymore. And I remember when he dragged me out of the house, I remember that I looked to my right and I remember that my mom was at the end of the hall and she was crying. And I remember I looked at her and my dad just kept dragging me. I didn't say anything either when he was dragging me out. Like I was just quiet. I was just like, in a way, I don't know. I want to say that I was relieved at the time, and I'm still to this day. I'm definitely a mama's girl. Me and my dad always had a very me and my dad are the same. We have the same character. We have the same, when we get angry, we're the same. So I love my father. I'm definitely a dad's girl too. But I just know that my mom wouldn't have had the heart to kick me out. It was definitely my dad. My dad had to do it, because my dad growing up, um, he until this day, he always tells me, you're the smartest out of the three kids. You're the one that can handle the most. You're the one that can do anything if you put your mind to it. So we have that relationship. We have if it's anybody, you're the one that can handle it. So I definitely disappointed my dad a lot. I definitely disappointed my mom, but my dad, I think I broke his heart. It sounds so bad, and it sounds so bad for me to say it, but I definitely broke my dad's heart.
Looking back on that, does that feel like what your parents did? Does that feel like an appropriate response to the circumstances?
Yeah, they were trying to save their two other children. They were trying to save their young son, who my brother, when he was little, I'm 8 years older than him. My brother used to follow me everywhere. My brother used to follow me everywhere. He was always like, "What are you doing? Can I go do that with you? Like, can you buy me this? Can you buy me that?" I definitely can say that I was a good sister to him. Um, and I used to try to take care of him as much as possible. In his school, in his elementary school, everybody thought that I was his mom. That's how much I was involved in his life. And I think that my parents didn't have any other choice. And I feel like I would have done the same, because I have, imagine having a very impressionable little boy, and my older sister just has the title of being the older sister. But when it comes down to taking care of things, I'm usually the one that gets called. And I'm usually the one with the most level head, like I'm level headed, and um, they were just trying to save their two other kids, I think. And they didn't know how to save me at the time. So they, I feel like they did what they could have done at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never been mad at them for kicking me out, or I just know that I broke my dad's heart, and I hurt my mom a lot. So it's really sad, and I don't think I'm ever going to be able to forgive myself. Um, but yeah.
Okay, so then you find Mr. Wonderful, and you guys uh, do your thing. So what happens next?
So we definitely do our thing. We definitely keep getting high. There's definitely some crimes that happened. Not really bad crimes, but like stealing and stuff like that. When I say crimes, they're like, "Oh my God," So no, it's not that bad crimes. It definitely that relationship expired really quickly from my side, because again, I was a really heartless person. I was really, if you get in my way, like I don't need you in my life anymore, type of deal. And it got to the point where he was saying the "I love you" part, and I was like, oh, like don't do that. Like we're just getting high here, homie. Like we don't have to do that. And it got to the point where I was living at his house, and I would leave. I would just leave, and I would be gone for weeks, and he would be like looking for me like in the streets. He would tell other drug dealers not to sell to me because he wanted me to come back home. And I was like, this is not my home. Like I'm a free bird. I don't have to be here. And I want to go get high and go wild out without you. Like you're holding me back. And he really thought that we were going to sit there and like play house and be like a couple and have kids and everything. And that just, it wasn't it. It wasn't what we were going to do. So I ended up leaving that house. I ended up I would find the most random places to stay. And then I ran out of money. So what is somebody who is a drug addict that runs out of money? I didn't want to stoop to the level of stealing by myself. And I started to strip. So I became a stripper at a strip club, obviously. And I was making really good money. And I was able to rent hotel rooms for months at a time. That's how good of money I was making. And I was still able to feed my habit. And I was able to like buy stuff if I needed, like, like hygiene and all that stuff. So I was able to sustain myself for a pretty long time, but a stripper got killed in the strip club that I was at. She was murdered, and I was always by myself, and that really scared me because at the time I was what, like 90 pounds. I'm 5 feet, so you look at me the wrong way and I can fall down and break something. So I was very scared for my life, and I decided to stop doing that there. And I ended up going to another strip club where I was there for a couple more months. And then when I ended up going to my hotel, the hotel got raided, and I was detained for like 10 hours probably. And thank God I didn't have anything on me. I had heard the SWAT team coming down the rooms. So I had I had flushed all my drugs that I had on me, and I had broken the syringe and the pipe, and I had put it behind, it was a Motel 6. It wasn't like a bougie motel, but behind the bed, they have like I want to say like a box, like a piece of wood, and I wrapped it up, and I believe it was toilet paper. I wrapped it up, and I just like stuffed it back there because obviously you can't flush a pipe and a syringe down the toilet. It's not gonna work. And they knocked my door down. They asked me to put my hands up. They detained me. They asked me a lot of questions. And they asked me if I had drugs on me. They asked me if I had like any criminal record. Just like I was detained, and I thought that I was gonna get arrested and deported. So I was definitely very scared. But thank God they let me go, and they allowed me to get my belongings from the room. They told me that I couldn't stay there, and I was really, really upset because I had just paid for the week. And I had to take a bus all the way to Mr. Wonderful's house. And I was like, I love you. I want to stay here. I want to make a house with you and like all this stuff. And he was like, yay. And then I ended up leaving 3 days later because I found like another place to stay. So yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
So a couple questions. So, but pre-stripping, how did you get money? Was it from Mr. Wonderful?
It was from Mr. Wonderful. It was definitely from Mr. Wonderful. And I had, I worked a little bit longer at the cafes, but then the one that I was working at got raided. So I was like, I'm out of here because I'm going to end up getting arrested, Mm-hmm. So I had money saved from that. And then I had Mr. Wonderful that was obviously, like paying for my food, paying for this. But when you're on drugs, you don't eat. That's how I ended up 90 pounds. Mm-hmm. You definitely don't eat. And so I didn't cost a lot to support me. It was just the drugs. But yeah, I went back to Mr. Wonderful, and he was Mr. Wonderful.
Okay. And then, so how long were you stripping? Like what was the total like length of time that was a thing?
I want to say almost a year.
Okay.
It was close to a year, maybe a couple months off, but it was almost a year that I did that.
And then there was a murder. And then there was a murder like while you were at work, like.
Yes. She was actually, I don't want to say friends because nobody's your friend, but I did know her. And she was a very cool woman. She had kids as well. And a customer became very obsessed with her and would go in there every single night and would look for her. And obviously, like, you have days off. You're not there every single night. You're not there 7 days a week. So when she would have days off, like he would have to be thrown out. And the only reason why he didn't get 86 like banned from the location was because he had a friend that was a friend of the owner of the club, so they weren't going to ban that guy. And she went to work that night, and when her shift was over, there's bouncers. So those bouncers take care of you. You pay them out every night so they can walk you in to and from the locker and walk you to and from your car so nobody harasses you, because obviously there's guys like that do get obsessed with you. And our bouncer, because we used to share a bouncer, he told me that he was going to walk her out and then he was going to come back and then walk me out, because I was getting a ride home because I didn't have a car at the time. My parents had taken my car away. And he walked out, and I guess he came back for me. And when I don't know what I had to go do, so I took a while to leave with the bouncer. It was probably like 20 minutes later, and then when we walked out, I saw the guy hit her one last time with the bat. He killed her with the bat.
And you were there, like, you saw it.
I was probably like 10 feet away, and I remember her arm laying like in the most awkward position like you can imagine. Like, it was like he had broken it. It was like twisted back, and she was just laying there. And I remember the bouncer ran. Somebody was like yelling and saying to call 911. And I remember I grabbed my bag and I was like, and I walked the other way and I just left. I just started walking. I didn't wait for my ride. I didn't call anybody. I just started walking, and I just kept walking and walking. And I think I was crying too. And it was just like out of a movie. It was just horrible. Like, I'll never get that image out of my head. But the next day, again, I went back to Mr. Wonderful because that was my safe place. The next day, it came out in the news. It came out how he had been just obsessed with her and had asked her to marry him, but she was like, no, this is just they pay me to do this. Like, you pay me to give you this love. So I don't want to marry you. And he kept trying to convince her, and to the point when she was like, no, like, I'm going to put a restraining order. And then he just lost his marbles and beat her to death with a bat outside of the club. So, yeah.
So that has to, obviously, like, that's really close to home for you. Like, that's dangerous and scary, and obviously you're probably thinking like, that could have been me. So, yeah. And that was the end of it at that incident?
No, I never went back there. Still to this day, we drive by it, and I tried to avoid it as much as possible. But I ended up stripping for another strip club, and my Mr. Wonderful actually went there and made a scene, so they told me that I couldn't work there anymore.
And did he do that on purpose?
I'm pretty sure he did. He just wanted me to go back home and, I don't know, love on him or something, but it wasn't gonna happen. But he just made a scene, and like, my boss was like, hey, like, we don't accept that. We don't want that here. This is a classy establishment. So yeah, he told me that. He said to not come back. So yeah, that was the end of that. And yeah, that was definitely the end of that.
Okay. And then the last thing you were talking about was the SWAT thing. So my question on that is, what was the impetus for SWAT to raid was the whole motel that they just came and swept it out?
So it was like a big thing. So Motel 6 actually sold all of their customers' names and information to immigration and to the police department. And my rooms was one of the first rooms when you would drive into the parking lot. But in the back, there was a Hispanic drug dealer that was running his little drug ring from the rooms. Like, that whole floor was what, like 10 rooms? All of them he was paying for. And he had prostitutes coming in and out. He was selling drugs. Obviously, he was doing them as well. So because of that guy, they did a whole raid on the whole hotel complex. I don't know what you would call it. And I was unfortunately at the wrong place at the wrong time. And thankfully, I was able to flush everything down the toilet, and I was able to hide all of my paraphernalia. and I didn't have anything on me or in my purse because they searched everything. And I was detained, and they were trying to charge me. They were like asking me if I had drugs. They were like, okay, like there was a female cop. She was like, if I take you to the station, if I strip search you, are you gonna have anything? And I was like, no, like I'm not gonna have anything. I didn't have anything on me. Like I was telling her the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, you're high. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm
Were
not
you?
high. What are you talking about? Hell yeah, I was. I was definitely high. I was definitely very high. But I was they had me sitting in the sidewalk with my legs crossed in handcuffs for 6 hours, I want to say, maybe longer.
Did they know?
And
Did they know you were like, had you done anything wrong according to them?
no, I was just in this really bad hotel that was known for prostitution and illegal stuff. And they even asked me, they were like, because I had a wad of cash in my purse, and they were like, what is this from? And I was like, I'm a stripper. And they were like, if we call said strip club, are they going to say that you work there? And I'm like, yeah, you can call them. And I'm pretty sure they did call because they were just trying to find anything to charge me with.
Get you.
Yeah, so they definitely did call, and they were like, I heard the female cop tell the other cop that my story was true. So they still had me sitting there for like 2 more hours until they were like, okay, well, it seems we can't find anything on you, or that you've done, so we're just gonna let you go. And I was like, can I go back to my room? And they were like, no, you have to walk that way, start walking. And I was like, can I get my stuff? And a cop escorted me back to the room, and I was able to get the little clothes that I did have and little toiletries that I did have. And I ended up catching a bus. I had to wait at a bus stop, wait until the buses started running again, and catch the bus all the way to Mr. Wonderful's house.
And you said your parents took your car away?
They took it away. So I was definitely carless. So I had to walk and get on the bus, and yeah.
Okay, and then you're back at Mr. Wonderful's for 3 days. And then what'd you do?
And then I ended up leaving. I ended up sneaking out while he was at work because he was trying to get his life back together. He actually had stopped doing drugs and got a regular job, and he was honestly trying to build like a relationship with me, but I just wasn't with it.
That's interesting.
And yeah, it's very interesting, and it's actually very sad because he left his family for a really bad person for me, and he tried with all his heart to make it work, and it just didn't. I didn't want anything to do with him. He was just he stopped selling drugs, and that was where the attraction was, and I just didn't want anything to do with him. So after 3 days, I ended up sneaking out, and I'm from the west side, so I'm from West Phoenix, and I ended up all the way in East Phoenix, which is worse than downtown LA. Like worse, like the crime, the drugs, the gangs, way worse.
And this is not where your parents live, though? Your parents were in a different part of town, or? Okay.
My parents live in West Phoenix, so that's where I grew up, in West Phoenix. So okay. That's like, it's more family oriented, like all that. But I ended up all the way in East Phoenix, which is probably like 30 minutes away from where I grew up. And yeah, it was a very questionable neighborhood where I ended up in. And I ended up my living situations were just like hilarious. I ended up living with an ex coworker that I had when I was in the gambling cafes. I ended up living with her and her husband, and they ended up renting this location where on one side of the property it was a gambling cafe, and on the other side was the living headquarters. So I was a cashier for the gambling cafe, and they would pay me in what is it called, room and board. Like they would pay for my food, and I would be living there and smoking drugs with them. So yeah, where I was at.
So then so it's a crazy story. Do you know you have I mean, you obviously know haven't had a crazy life. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So as we continue on this journey, what's next?
So, okay, so I'm living there with them. I'm doing drugs. I'm doing crystal meth. I started doing heroin as well. I ended up making a friend, not a friend like I said earlier, but a friend who introduced me to heroin, and I started doing that and meth. So I was really, 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 really far gone. And like throughout this time, my parents are trying to reach out. I have cousins trying to reach out. My siblings are trying to reach out. I'm just like ignoring everybody. I'm ignoring everybody. I don't want any help. I don't want anything. What actually changed my mind one night was I was really like I had gone into this really deep depression, and I was still using drugs, but I wasn't getting high anymore. It wasn't working for me anymore. And at this point, I was injecting already. My veins were gone. They were not, they were just my arms. I had destroyed my arms. I was injecting behind my knees, in between my toes, like anything, any vein that I can find, I would try to get as much drugs as I could. And I don't remember what day it was, but I ended up receiving a message from one of my cousins, and she told me, she was like, in the message, I still remember what it said. She said, "Hey, um, God told me to check in on you. For some reason, you're not okay." And I just started bawling and just like crying, like ugly cry. And I messaged her back and I told her that I hadn't been okay for a very, very long time. And she told me that she was there for me. She said that if I needed anything to let her know. She said to talk to God and to, very religious. So she's a very religious person. And I just felt good talking to her because I hadn't spoken to any of my family for almost, at that point, 3 years. 2.5 years, almost three, I believe. And I got even more depressed. I started even using more drugs. I don't even know how that's even possible. And I wanted to end my life the day before I turned 23. So the day before I turned 23, I was like, I'm just gonna end my life. Nobody wants me in their life. I'm not useful to anybody. I just really talking down to myself. And I got on Facebook and I saw my eighth grade teacher. This is where my eighth grade teacher comes in. Remember my eighth grade teacher? So this is where he comes in. I had a really good eighth grade teacher. Those that you remember for the rest of your life, the ones that gives you that speech of being a good person. And that was my eighth grade teacher, so Mr. Tuppence. So and still to this day I still call him like that. I cannot call him by his first name. It feels really weird, but he's a really good family friend now. And I remember I saw him post something about one of his students, and he was a really good teacher. He was really passionate about his students. So I decided to message him. And again, I was 22 years old. So the last time I seen him or talked to him was when I was like 13, right? And I messaged him and I was like, "Hey, do you remember me?" And then he was like, "Of course I do. You were one of my favorite students." And I said, and then he started asking me how I was. And I said, "Oh, well, I'm not good." And he was like, "Why?" And I was like, "I've made some mistakes." And then he's like, "Everybody makes mistakes." And then I said, "I am a full-blown drug addict. I haven't lived in a house for almost 3 years. I'm really deep, like in this addiction. and I don't want to live anymore. And he responded with, it's okay. I used to be a drug addict too, and I can help you. And we just kept going back and forth. He told me that I can't give up on life. He told me that at that time, his ex-girlfriend or his girlfriend at the time had overdosed, so she had passed away. And he's like, I don't want to see you. I don't want that to happen to you. And he just kept messaging me and kept messaging me. And I was like, whoa, dude, it was just one night. I felt like suicidal for one night. Like, I'm good today, you know? But he kept messaging me. He kept telling me, like, when he would go to Arizona, because he was living here in California, he was like, he would tell me, hey, like, I'm going to go to Arizona to go visit my son. Do you want to go to a meeting? And I would be like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm good. Like, don't worry about it. Like, you don't have to help me. But I actually still have those messages, and it's like a really, really like strong conversation that we had, you know. I'll never forget it. And he just kept telling me that he could help me, that he can get me into rehab, that it will be like at no cost. And I was like, no, 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 I'm good. I don't need your help. Like, I just, you know, I just wanted somebody to talk to. And he said, okay. He's like, I'm here. And I was like, okay, that's good to know. And again, I don't even know how I spiraled even more out of control. And within the next few weeks, I was prostituting myself. And that was like probably one of the darkest time I ever lived through. And that was like my means of getting money and getting drugs. And again, I was like 90, 100 pounds, and you know, doing my makeup. So I was a pretty girl. The drugs hadn't gone into me that bad yet. And I was still able to get my way, but I was prostituting myself. You know, this very good Hispanic girl that I was, and I ended up prostituting myself. And I was already at the end of my game. You're gonna think this is like super weird, but I ended up living in a guy's house with his 3 daughters, and I was their nanny. And he used to pay me in drugs. So that's how he used to pay me. And I used to watch his children while on drugs, because he was on drugs as well. But that's the last place that I ended up living. And I ended up contacting my mom again. And I was a week that I was super sick. Like, I had lost my voice. Had fevers because the drugs were affecting me a lot. And I ended up calling my mom, and I told her that I needed medicine. And my mom was like, yes, I'll take you to the store right now. Blah, blah, blah. She picked me up. I told her to pick me up in a certain location so she wouldn't know where I was living. I walked to her car. She started bawling her eyes out. And I remember telling her, if you don't stop crying, I'm going to get out of the car. So you need to stop crying. So she's pulled herself together, and she told me how much she missed me and how much she loved me and how much she prayed every single night for me, for my safety. And she told me that I needed to get help. And I told her no. I said, if you keep talking about God and about help, I will make you pull this car over, and I will get out of the car, and you will never see me again. That's what I told my mom. And she used to take me shopping. She used to take me to go eat. I would just toss the food around in the plate, and she would like beg me to eat, and I'd be like, no, I'm good. I got reunited with my brother. My brother was super happy. He cried when he saw me. I didn't have the guts to see my dad or my sister. I just saw my mom and my brother, and they were both really happy that they were able to see me, and I was really happy I was able to see them. And then I met a girl, and she was gonna start, like, she told me that she was gonna start like pimping me out or something. And I was like, no, you're not. But she was like, she could have strong armed me like easily. Like, again, like I was like 90 pounds, so she could have strong armed me easily. So I ended up messaging Mr. Toppins, and I was like, you know what, I'm ready, because this is gonna get worse. Like in the back of my head, I was like, this is gonna get worse, and I'm gonna end up dead. Like this is where my life is gonna take me. Like I'm gonna end up dead, and I'm never gonna see my mom again. I'm never gonna see my brother again. And the last time I had seen my brother, he was, when they're barely gonna go through puberty, like their voices crack and like they sound like a little kid, but they kind of sound like a grown up. That's like the last time I had heard my brother, his voice, that's what he sounded like. And when I saw him again, he sounded like a full grown man. And he was over 6 feet. And I was like, what happened? What happened? Like I missed so much out of somebody that I like adore with all my heart. And like my mom, like she looked older, she like had more wrinkles, but it was because of me, because of all the stress I had to put her through. And it was just a really, really horrible feeling. And I held on to those feelings, and I messaged Mr. Tuppence, and I was like, you know what? I need help. I'm ready. I'll do whatever you ask. I want to be normal again. That's what I told him. And he said, okay. He was like, I'm in California. He's like, fall break is coming up, and I'm going to send somebody for my son, like a family friend is going to drive my son halfway to Blythe. I'll ask her to pick you up, and I'll pick both you and my son, and I'll bring you guys over here to California, and I'll bring you to the rehab, and we'll start your new life. And I was like, okay. So I told my mom. My mom bought me like a whole bunch of stuff. She bought me like a luggage. She bought me clothes. Like she was just over the moon that I was finally getting help. She was so happy. And I think it was like a couple days later that I got to Huntington Beach, and I got to my new house, a sober living. Like it was less than a mile away from the beach. Like I could throw a rock and hit the beach. Like it was like super close.
Can I ask you a couple questions from a little bit back here? So one thing that's very interesting. So at the point where you reached out to Mr. Teppens, probably saying his name.
Tuppence, yeah.
But you had all these people reaching out to you at that point. You had your family, friends, et cetera, and you were still in like one track mind with drugs, and drugs were the central theme. But then it's like I don't know if it's a serendipity or whatever, but like why would the 8th grade teacher guy who is kind of a stranger at this point in your life, it's interesting that moment happened and you reached out to that person. It's like, I don't know if it seems like inexplicable that would be that little nudge that like started the process of the change.
Honestly, I have mentioned this to multiple people. I don't know what it was. I'm now a very I believe in God again, and I'm very in tune with that. But I want to say, like, I don't want to turn this into a religious thing, but I want to say it was definitely God. Like, he's like the most random person, like the last time, but he had helped my family before. It wasn't like he was like a complete stranger. He had helped my family before with immigration problems with my dad. So I don't know why, like I saw him post, I believe it was about one of his students passing away. And he's still a teacher. He's very passionate about his students, and he like, like it's not like that teacher that's like, oh, you don't want to learn this, don't learn it then, and I think it was because I needed to say what I was feeling, and I thought, oh, he's not going to answer. Like he's probably gonna be like, oh, you drug addict, like, like you turned into a drug addict, like ill, but he did answer. So I don't know. I feel like it's like unexplainable. I feel like it's just was God's way of being like, okay, little girl, like you need to chill, you need help, you need to get back to normal, and this is your open door. You better grab onto it and you better walk through, you know? So I feel like that's why I did it. Like I was just like, I remember looking at his post and I was like, I mean, click and message. And I didn't think he was going to respond, and he did. So I would like to give you like a more explicit explanation for that, but I simply can't.
Well,
I
and
simply can't.
it's interesting because it's almost like you needed a difficult, I don't know if this makes any sense, but you had all these people that were offering you like a hand, like, hey, here's a hand, I will help you, just grab my hand. Like, how hard is that? Just grab my hand, Johanna, and I will, whatever's going to happen next is probably not going to be easy, but I'll be there for you. And you're like, no thanks, I don't want any part of that. But this like guy who there was some history there, I guess there was definitely some history there, but he wasn't like offering to help you, and you chose that guy to be the one to
Yeah.
kind of ask for help from. So yeah, it's cool, it's interesting, it's kind of just the randomness of life, maybe a little bit, a little bit of uh, God or religion or the unknown that created that
Yeah.
moment. Um, but that really strikes me in what you said.
Yeah.
Um,
It's definitely weird. It's definitely, I don't want to, for lack of a better word, it's definitely weird, but like I said, he's definitely, and again, back to I don't want to make this like religious, but he's definitely been a guardian angel, not just once with my dad's immigration. Like he was able to get my dad out of getting deported. So he didn't just help with that, but he also helped me get my life back. So again, like this person is a family friend. I told you this before, like when I have a child, I want to name my son after him. Like like I do. And like my husband even agreed and everything, because he's been like a guardian angel to me. And I love him like a second father, because that's what he's been, when I was in rehab, he would help me. He would buy me groceries, because obviously my parents don't have a lot of money. He got me out there. He was very strict with me. Like he was making sure I went to group, making sure I did what I was supposed to do. Sometimes, don't get me wrong, like I hated him and I was like, oh my God, like, why are you doing this to me? Type of deal. But he was like, nope, you need to keep with your program. You need to keep with, you need this, you need rehab. So he's definitely somebody that I respect a lot and that I love a lot. And he, I don't know, it just felt all in place. Like, I don't know, like I like to think, like, I don't like to think this, but I'm just like, he became my teacher to one day save my life, like that's what I like to think. It sounds so weird when you say it out loud, but that's pretty much what he did. And he struggled with addiction as well. And obviously, we didn't know that. I didn't know that. Um, and it was cool to get help from somebody that understood what I was going through. Because my mom didn't understand what I was going through. Neither did my dad. Neither did any of my friends or the family members that were reaching out to me. They didn't understand what I was going through, the need that I had to get high, the feelings that I had. But he did. He understood them, and he didn't even feel bad for me. He would be like, "Stop being a martyr. Like, get yourself together." And like he was like that. Like you're gonna be fine. Like relax. Like he was that type of person. And I feel like I needed that, instead of somebody like, "Oh, I don't understand. Just stop doing drugs." Like the difference. It was just, I don't know. Like I want to give you an explanation for it, but there's like no really explanation for it.
yeah, and I mean, your parents didn't have the drug experience, or they didn't have the, I don't know, the lingo or the expertise maybe to like give you what you needed in that time.
Yeah. It was definitely that. They were definitely lacking that. You know, again, like my dad does drink. My dad's a social alcoholic. He's, but he's a really good dad, and he's always been a really good husband. My mom doesn't drink, or she's never drank in her life. She's a really good mom. My dad did have a drug problem when he was young, but he was able to stop by himself. And I think that that prevented my dad from understanding what I was going through, because I feel like he was like, if I stopped, she can stop too, and none of this would be happening. And she's being dramatic, or why is she doing this? Like she's gonna kill herself, blah blah blah. When he was able to stop, and I wasn't. So they definitely did not understand what I was going through, and I definitely needed somebody to understand like my struggle and my pain, and why I was using drugs, and the fact that I was killing myself slowly. So
Okay, and then it's off to California, and treatment. Um, what was that like?
well,
Let
I
me
want to say that. Oh,
let me
go ahead.
let me reframe a little bit. So you're like hardcore drug addict, and then I'm assuming when you go to treatment, you don't do any drugs. So
No.
was it like a whoosh to like a like cold turkey kind of a situation?
So before he picked me up, I had already stopped doing drugs for, I think I had 6 days. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it was a lot.
Mhm.
And so my sobriety date is September 26th, and I didn't get to California until October 6th, I believe, or 7th. So it was maybe almost 2 weeks that I had been off drugs when he picked me up, and I got here. So I was still going through withdrawals. They drug tested me when I came into the facility. Meth and heroin were still in my system because I had done it for so long. It wasn't going to get out just like that. And I mean, they throw you in there and you're doing group from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. nonstop groups. They're an hour long. You're supposed to participate. It's like school again. And then you have like, I would call it PE, but it's like activities. And I used to hate them. They used to take us hiking. They used to take us to the beach. The beach is like cool, like the first time you go, and it's like, oh, the water. Oh my God, the sand. It's great. But then they take you every single week and you hate it because you're coming down from drugs and all you want to do is sleep and eat. And so obviously you meet a bunch of people, you make new friends, your roommates, your housemates, you become close. But obviously in this world, in my world that I was part of, people die, people OD, people leave and they go back to doing drugs. But I didn't have that choice because I had a scholarship. I didn't have insurance. So with rehabs, obviously they use insurance, and like you use it and you go, you relapse, you come back and use it again. But I didn't have that choice. I was scholarshiped in. So it was this, you have this one shot, you need to get it, or if not, you're out. So yeah, I definitely got it, but life wasn't good after, like it wasn't, I didn't go to rehab and life was great after. When I was 30 days sober, my mother got diagnosed with cancer. Um, she had liposarcoma, which is a really rare form of cancer, and it started to spread, and it started out in her left knee. And I think I told you this before, but I believe it was you or Justine. I don't know what I need to. But I remember her telling me, and I remember telling her that I wanted to go home, and she said no. She said that I couldn't go home. Um, she said that I had to continue to get help, and I just wanted an excuse to go back and do what I was doing.
Mm.
And it got to the point where she got really sick, and my mother's an immigrant, so they didn't want to help her out in Arizona. They told her to go back to her country several times. And I was able to find a doctor here in California who does charity work and charity like operations and stuff. So I was able to contact that doctor, and she was starting to get help, but obviously things get worse before they get better. And it got to a point where she was really sick, and in the back of my mind, I was like, and this is horrible. This is really, really horrible. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, like, why doesn't she just pass away so I can go back to doing what I was doing? Nobody's gonna question me if I go back to that, because my mother died. Like, who would have questioned me? Like, you know? But that was horrible thinking of mine. And it was obviously, when you're in rehab, you go to therapy and you do groups, and they try to help you as much as possible. But it was because I felt so guilty that I wasn't there for the time that I wasn't there, and the horrible kid that I was, that at the moment my mother was suffering, and I didn't want her to suffer anymore. So I would think that I thought about it one time, so I feel really bad. And I got to the point where I wasn't paying attention in group, blah blah blah. And they ended up telling my mother, and my mother and I talked, and she told me, she was like, if you continue with your treatment, because you need treatment, she said, I will continue with my treatment. The day that you stop is the day that I stop getting treatment. And I was like, oh my God, you can't do that. You can't put me up on the wall like that. But she was like, you have to agree. We have to make a deal. And we made a deal. She wouldn't stop her treatment, and I wouldn't stop my treatment, and we would both get better together. So, yeah. I think 30 days after that, she ended up getting her first surgery. And that's when I met Justine and StandUp for Kids.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So 9/26, and you said that's your sobriety day. Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Have you been sober since that day?
Yes. This year is going to be 4 years that I've been sober.
So 9/26/17.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because my daughter's birthday is 9/26/18.
Really?
Yeah, so her birthday is your sober day, or your sobriety day.
It's a good day. It's a very good day.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so what was the so it's like 2 months sober when you meet Justine?
Yes, I met Justine, and I don't know if Justine's ever told you the story about how I met her. She brings it up a lot, and she rubs it in my face. But I met her, and Dane, I don't think you ever met Dane, but he was a mentor at Center for Kids, but he was also a driver in my rehab. So one day he was like, hey, I'm going to take you somewhere, and I think it would be really good for you. And this other girl that was with me, but the other girl was pregnant. She was heavily pregnant already. She was like towards the end of her pregnancy. And I was like, where are you taking us? And he was like, don't worry about it. Like, I'm not going to do anything to you. I'm like the driver from your rehab. You're fine. And we ended up going to the Huntington Beach location. I don't know if you were ever there. He was like, okay, let's get out of the car. So we got out of the car, and I met Justine, and I was like, I don't need any help because my dad's going to let me go back home. So my friend is the one that needs help. And Justine was like, okay, you know how Justine is. My dad had promised me that if I got, I believe, 90 days sober, I was going to be able to go back home. But he lied. He definitely lied. He definitely told me that so I can stay in rehab and just continue to be sober. And it got to the point where I was going to get kicked out of rehab because I couldn't afford the rent because my scholarship had expired. And they kicked me out the day that Mr. Tuppence had gone on vacation, I believe, to New York. because he had backed me up through everything. He knew that they knew that if he was there, he was gonna back me up through that, like don't kick her out type of deal. But yeah, they ended up kicking me out, and Justine ended up she housed me in Anaheim in a sober living there. And I had to tell her that I really did need help, even though like I had told her like maybe like a couple weeks before that I didn't need help, that I was gonna go back home. But no, my parents did not let me go back home, and I really did need help. So yeah, Justine, like all of them, like Carlia, Justine, they all like jumped into gear. And obviously it was a very difficult situation because at the time I did not have papers. I was illegal, and me getting a job and just all of that was, it was going to definitely put some roadblocks in our on our way. Um, but they were able to help me through everything. They were able to get a lawyer to help me with my documentation. They were able to house me for a year and a half. They were able to teach me everything. They were able to teach me how to dress for an interview, how to build a resume, how to speak in an interview, how to budget, how to not be so angry. Um, I was part of the entrepreneurship program as well. I met a lot of people. I met Dr. Wright. I was an assistant to Denise and Dr. Wright at the time. And, Denise taught me a lot of stuff too, as well. But my favorite, my favorite mentor was definitely Albert. And I don't think you met him, but he was definitely my favorite mentor. And he was a very quiet person. He was in the Navy, but he used to just like lift me up. Like he used to lift me up, and it's one of those, we need a lot of lifting up. Obviously, if we're like in part of this program, we need a lot of lifting up because we haven't had it. And I can still remember like a lot of things that he told me. Like I was gonna go far in life. He used to teach me how to budget. He would not put up with my crap. Like if I told him I was gonna do something and if I didn't do it the next week, like he would give me such a hard time, and he would make sure that I did it. And when I had milestones, he would be proud. When I didn't do the stuff that I would do, like he would be disappointed, and I would feel bad. So I would do the stuff that like I was supposed to do. He walked me through a lot of things. Obviously, Stand Up for Kids and my mentor. And this is like sounds like super corny, but I still remember one time I was being how do I say this without saying a bad word, like a smart aleck. And I walked into the Huntington Beach location, and he was putting his computer away, and I knew that he was working on his master's. He was putting his computer away, and I was like, you know what, Albert, I want to be like you when I grow up. Being a little smart mouth person, right? And he was like, he used to call me Joe, and he was like, you know what, Joe, you're not going to be like me when you grow up. You're going to be better than me. And I was like, what? Like the simplest things, like I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that he told me that, because instead of, you're used to people belittling you, you're used to being in the drug world, you're used to being in the crime world, and people don't lift you up. People don't say nice things to you. People don't say that you can do it, And I think that was like one of the first times that I heard somebody say something uplifting to me, even though I tried to be a jerk about it. And it felt good. And I remember I was like staring at him, and I was like, thank you for that. And he was like, you're welcome. And I was like, yeah. Yeah. So it was just a lot of sweet moments like that with everybody, with Justine, with Carlia. I was very mean to Carlia the first day I met her. Very rude, very mean. She still tells this story, and I wish she didn't tell it, but she finds it very funny because, I'm not that person anymore. But the first day I met her, I was like, I don't like to hug people. I don't like it when they touch me. Like, that's gross. That's like so like ill, like disgusting, right? And when she was dropping me off to my house, because she had to take me to my first immigration appointment, and we had talked all the way back home, well, before I got out of the car, like I reached over to give her a hug. And she was like, "You hugged me. Oh my God, you hugged me." And I was like, "Oh no, why did I do that?" So I have, yeah, like I can tell you each and every one of the staff that they were around me at the time that I was getting my life together. I can tell you a story about each of them and how they mold me into the person that I am today. And again, I don't want to take the credit away from my parents because they did the best that they could with what they had. But like, I love Justine as a mother, Carlia as well. I will always have love for Albert, for Denise, for everybody that was there, because I was a handful. I was definitely a handful. And, after a year and a half, I was able to get a job because they were able to help me get my DACA. And I was able to get a job by myself. I was managing 10 houses, 10 sober living houses, and I was working in an office. And Carlia and her daughter showed up with balloons and a teddy bear my first day. They've been there through it all. And then when I lived independently, Justine sent me a bunch of gifts to, decorate my new apartment. And it's definitely molded me to the person that I am today. So yeah.
Yeah. So I've worked at StandUp for Kids for 2 years. So I get to see the youth that come through, and I know how big of a handful that a lot of them are.
Mm-hmm.
But you do, like, when you tell your story and you expand upon like how you came to be you, um and then how those little moments when you were at a really um vulnerable point, or just there's those little moments that just that small uplifting comment or that just little nudge has so much impact. It has just this like supernatural force to it, kind of like Mr. Teppins in the Facebook
Mm-hmm.
comment, that you're like, you can't really even explain those moments either. But um and as you know, like, people reach out to StandUp for Kids like when they're at their worst and when they need us the most. So it's when though it's like we're getting them at that transformative moment where
Yeah.
they've went this one way for X amount. I don't know. Every case is different, but
Mm-hmm.
it's powerful to be a part of helping people find their way again, or whatever it is, helping them, just being part of the solution and part of uh, bringing goodness, bringing the internal goodness that everybody has, and kind of pulling that back out again and making that, because you're like, you've said it a few times, like you were a bad person and you were one track mind on drugs and you treated people like crap and you didn't care and whatever, but there was a heart and a soul in there the whole time, and it needed to be nurtured or pulled back out. And so that's one of the things that StandUp for Kids is there to do. um, and now you are a staff member, and you have been for a while. So now you're in the purple. You're on the purple team, trying to find the Johannas out there and reel them in. And I mean, from living it, that it takes persistence. It takes a Mr. Teppins approach of just being consistent. Um, so when you, like, on your street outreach, or on your community outreach, I guess, like, do you draw? I'm assuming you have to on some extent, but your life experience and does that, like, if I was doing street outreach and not having went through and dealing with that, it's obviously a different perspective for you having a more direct experience with it. So I'm trying to figure out a question to ask around that, but I guess a question might be, do you see yourself in the kids that you find on the streets?
Yeah. All the time, actually. Like, I've encountered some youth that will, like, I can tell they're using. I can tell they're using. I can spot somebody that's high from a mile away. That's something that you kind of leave with as a superpower. I wouldn't call it a superpower, but for me, it feels like it is, you know? I can definitely tell when people are using or have been using or just, or they'll be like, I don't need help. Like, I'm good. Or they'll get mad. And it's like, hey, like, I've been in your shoes. I've been that person that doesn't want help or doesn't need help or that gets, pissed off because you're assuming that I'm a drug addict. And I'm not assuming. I'm just letting you know that I know what it is. And then I feel like after I say that, some will open up more and some will kind of just back up more. But it's a hit or miss. It's always a hit or miss, no matter what. And then when I'm doing community outreach or any type of presentation, I do try to bring it in just because I want people to know that I understand. I understand what is needed from our kids. I understand, like, if we're trying to join forces with another nonprofit, I will understand what they need. Your clients, the people that you serve, I can understand. And just in jobs in general that I've had, I was a senior advocate for a homeless shelter, a women's homeless shelter, and a lot of the coworkers that I had were never in that situation, and a lot of the clients would lie or would say things, and I'll be like, listen, girl, like, I've been in your situation. I know that you have drugs on you. You need to give them to me before I call security and have you taken off the premises. So pull them out from wherever you have them and just put them in this box, and I'll discard them. Okay. So yeah, it definitely has helped out in my career life, if you want to call it. And I definitely like to let people know, especially because a lot of people have this misunderstanding of homeless people. A lot of people think that we choose to be like that. We choose to be on the streets. We choose to be drug addicts. We choose to be alcoholics. And that's not true. It's not true. It's not. I didn't, as an 11-year-old, I never thought that, oh, one day I'm going to wake up and I'm going to want to smoke and shoot up crystal meth. No kid thinks like that, And at the time, obviously, as I got older, I knew what I was doing. It was bad. But at the time, as a kid, you don't think like that. You don't think that you're doing something bad. You think that you are cool. You think you're part of the group, but you don't realize that in your brain there's an addiction developing that was asleep, and you woke it up with that first hit of weed or that first sip of alcohol. You woke it up because it's a disease. I do believe it's a disease. So I think that a lot of people are misinformed, and I just want to share my knowledge and my experience so people can know, hey, like, we still have a chance. We still have a chance to be normal, and we have a chance to turn our lives around, our life around. We just need some help. Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, so what's next for you? Or let me say that. You have any kind of plan? You know what where you're going? Like, if I said I don't know. I don't even know this myself, but I'll ask you an impossible question. Where do you think you'll be in 3 to 5 years? Like, where do you hope to be?
I have a very simple dream for myself. And when I mean simple, I mean I lived and did and undid so many things that I like my quiet life. This year it's gonna be 2 years that I'm married, that I got married, and I found my soulmate, and he's sober as well, and he was homeless at some point, and his life was pretty much like mine, and obviously we want to start a family, we want to purchase a house, and at some point I would like to go back to school. And I don't know why lately, it's either I want to be a teacher or I want to be a drug and alcohol counselor. But I definitely want to either be that teacher that Mr. Tuppence was for me, or be that person that somebody can turn to when they have an issue, a problem like I did as drugs and alcohol. So I definitely want to give back, and I definitely want to help other people that are like me. And yeah, I definitely want to be able to do that. So yeah, but yeah, my dream is very simple. I want to buy a home where you know yourself that I'm going to be moving soon. I'm going to be moving back to Arizona, and we're going to purchase a home, and we're trying to start a family right now. So my dream is definitely very simple, but I like that. I like simple.
And where in Arizona? Do you know? Do you have a area?
We do not know exactly the area. It's definitely not going to be where, we're trying to avoid a lot of areas that I used to be at. And we're thinking about either, we have several. We have Scottsdale, we have Peoria, we have north of Phoenix. So that's definitely like some of the areas that we kind of we definitely are avoiding multiple areas. But yeah, we definitely, my husband's from here, but he's like, oh, well, something new, and it's cheap over there. And my family loves him, so we'll have a lot of support over there, especially if we have a child soon. So yeah,
And
definitely very exciting.
yeah, that's awesome. Is the impetus to be closer to your family? Is that the draw?
Yes.
Yeah. And have you
Yeah, it's
you're
definitely.
and you whatever, you're connected to your family and siblings and cousins and all that?
Yeah. My younger brother lives with me now. Him and my husband went to school together. They just graduated a couple months ago. And I'm very close to my mother. My mother is cancer free. This year is going to be 4 years that she's cancer free, or three. I think it's 3 or 4. Um, and I'm still a mama's girl. I'm still very close to my sister, and I'm very close to my dad again. So, and my dad and my mom and my family love my husband. So, yeah, it's definitely it's definitely better than what I expected. Way better. It's back to normal how my relationship was with my parents before I did drugs. So I'm really, really, really grateful for that.
Okay, so if you could leave our audience with one takeaway, uh, do you have one thing you would tell somebody about homelessness or drugs, or maybe something that you've learned?
To not judge. Don't judge, because you do not know what that person is going through. You don't know why that person is doing drugs, what drove them to doing drugs. Not every story is like mine. Not every person chose to start doing meth, heroin, um, crack cocaine, weed. Not everybody chose to go that route. And sometimes, a lot of the times, mental health is involved. So I don't know. I would just like to tell people not to judge, and maybe kind of just help more. If I don't know, I feel like if I was normal, and when I mean normal, like if I didn't have the past addiction that I did, I feel like I would see somebody on the street that's homeless and I'll be like, look at that guy. Like he doesn't want to work. That's why he's there. Like he doesn't want to work. And I feel like that's a lot of people think like that. A lot of people think like that, or we're driving down the street and we see somebody with a sign that says veteran homeless, and we're like, oh, he doesn't, they help them a lot. He gets his check and he wastes it on drugs and on booze. And that's not true because my husband is a veteran and he was homeless. So I just not judge, maybe inform yourself more, maybe go down to your local nonprofit and maybe volunteer, maybe try to figure out why they are like that instead of judging them and being mean. So yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Johanna. I really appreciate the time and kind of opening up and being willing to share this. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening today to Listen Up, the Stand Up for Kids podcast. A big thank you to Gabby Villarreal and Billy Huynh for their production and editing support. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Click here to watch more. Please also consider a donation to help getting kids off the streets using the link below. 92 cents out of every dollar donated goes directly to supporting these kids. I'm your host, Michael Olson, Director of Development at Stand Up for Kids Orange County. Thanks for listening and have a great day.